and I'm going to admit all of them. Hello, everyone. I'll give everyone else a few seconds before we start, just in case some more people are coming and joining us, and we start shortly, okay? Okay, we have a minute past 6, and we don't want to take all of your time because I know all of you are busy. So we're going to go ahead and start, and people will continue to join us. Well, officially, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on building your business development plan for 2025. My name is Daniel Correa. I'm the Director of Learning and Development at Peak Leap, and I'm excited to have all of you with us today. What I'll ask you guys to do is please drop in the chat where you're joining us from today. Would like to know where all of you are coming from. For those that are new, I wanted to just leap to you. We're a training company dedicated to professionals and firms where we develop their commercial and leadership skills to excel in their fields. Through our e-learning platform, we offer a range of courses and resources that are designed to help you achieve new heights in your career. Today, I'm also very excited to announce the launch of a brand new course on creating a business development plan led by the one and only Gemma Francis, who I will introduce to you in just a second. At the end, please stay tuned for some more details about the webinar, and I'll talk to you about a special offer. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please write it in the chat. We'll try to answer all of them if the time allows us. But if not, I guarantee you we'll send you an email with the answers for your questions. So I am very excited and honored to have two experts with us today. First, we have Gemma Francis, our Peak Lead instructor and an expert in business development planning. Gemma has years of experience helping professionals like you achieve and create effective BD plans. Joining her is Anja Kreutzeller, a seasoned professional in business development who will be interviewing Gemma today. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Anja and Gemma so they can lead us through this webinar.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Anja Kreutzeller, and for those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO and founder of Peak Leap. I'm also a seasoned business development expert. I have worked in the world's largest and highest grossing law firms, and I also worked the last 5 years as a business development associate director for Kirkland & Ellis, where I led the team in marketing, business development, and PR. And that is also where I decided to found Peak Leap, because I've done a lot of training for associates and partners on creating their business development plans, creating go-to-market strategies, client strategies, all of the above. And I've decided that I would like to share my knowledge and the systems I've created over the years with a broader audience. And when I first started thinking about Peak Leap, there were a couple of people that came to mind where I thought they would add the most value to an audience of lawyers and consultants, and Gemma Francis was one of them. I will let her introduce herself in a minute, but when we started talking about this webinar, and because we think it's really important to have a plan, and you'll hear us say that a couple of times in this webinar, We also said that we really want this webinar to be interactive and you to walk away with a plan for 2025. You would have probably got an email from us with a framework of a business development plan. I have it printed here. If you didn't get the email, Sabine Pohl from our team just posted it in the chat, and we would like you to note down ideas, note down whatever comes to mind for each of the steps we're going to walk you through for the business development plan. And we want you to walk away with an idea of what to do in 2025. We will also ask you questions. They will pop up on your screen. It's mostly yes or no questions. And we would love for you to have, an essay and this webinar to be very interactive. Without further ado, let me please hand over my imaginary microphone to the brilliant Gemma Francis.
Thank you so much, Anja and Daniel, for that absolutely fabulous introduction. So I am Gemma Francis. I'm the founder of Gemma Francis Consulting. My experience is with working with law firms in particular, so of all sizes, but mainly large and mid-size, but also boutiques. And my experience is with individuals and law firms, and I've usually advised on things like developing strategies, coaching, directories, everything that a lawyer or a firm needs in order to grow their practice. So I've also worked with lots of lawyers on their BD plans, so crafting them both from scratch and then reviewing them and providing feedback. So I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you, Gemma. We've also at Peak Leap helped firms and individuals with their business development plans, especially law firms and consulting firms. But let's get into the main event. And step one for me would be to get the why out of the way. Gemma, let's get started with why do you need a business development plan?
So, I mean, the why is so important. So I think if you know me or if you follow me on LinkedIn or you've worked with me, you will have seen that I often talk about winging it. And I feel as if a lot of the legal and consultancy community are essentially winging it. And what they've found is they've had some success over the years, which is fantastic. But then often what happens is they hit a low point or a quiet period or a pandemic hits. And then they find themselves, they're not really sure what to do next. So they often end up what I like to call spraying and praying, which is doing lots of different activities, but you're not really assessing them. You don't really know sort of what works for you, but you're doing lots of different things. So it's not sustainable. So the reason why a BD plan is so important is that it provides you with direction and some focus for growth. It also ensures that you're proactive rather than reactive. So instead of saying yes to every single thing that crosses your desk, you're actually aligning your efforts with your goals. So you're focusing on the things that really make a difference. And it also just means that you can do more with less, which is really important to me and to my clients. So it's sustainable and it's reducing the chances of BD burnout. Giving you that time back. And then just in reference to why 2025 do you need to have a plan? I think the market is so crowded at the moment and BD is really evolving. So if you've never had a plan, I think next year is the time to have one.
I couldn't agree more. And that's why we're here, right? So, there are BD plans and there are BD plans. What distinguishes a good one from a brilliant business development plan?
So I think it's really important to note from the outset that every firm will approach this in a slightly different way. So there's lots of different formats, lots of different styles and different terminology, and that's okay. I think the most important thing is that your plan gets you to where you're going and it gives you a roadmap for how you're going to get there. So in terms of what makes a good plan a great one, it needs to have clearly defined actionable goals first off. You need to know that you've achieved it and that all links back to your goals. It also really needs to align with who you are as a person, with your team and your firm-wide strengths. So that might be, if your firm is really strong in tech, you probably want to bake that into your plan somewhere. And then also, I think it's also really important to mention lots of individuals that I've worked with, and I suffer with this myself, this sort of completer finisher mentality. So the creation of goals just in order to tick them off because you know that you can achieve them. It's really tempting, but actually what you want is to have a plan that challenges you, that gives you that growth, that pushes you outside of your comfort zone. And then finally, I think what makes a good plan a great one is that it's flexible, it's adaptable, it's moving with you. So I mentioned if there's a pandemic, you know you can adapt that and move with it. It shouldn't be stuck in a drawer.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, our first question to the audience is, have any of you experienced challenges due to not having a clear business development plan? You can just click yes or no, and we think it'll be interesting for all of us and you to see what the results are of these questions.
Lots of challenges.
Yeah, lots of challenges, I can tell. All right, let's get into the steps of the business development plan. So the first step would be a market analysis. Gemma, why is conducting a market analysis a vital step in creating an effective business development plan?
So it's really important to remember the fact that you're not pitching for work in a vacuum. So you're competing against others in a market that's changing. And you need to understand what you're up against before you put pen to paper. You need to be able to plan accordingly. So that's why I always use this as the first step. And what I mean by a market analysis is spotting opportunities and gaps that you might be able to capitalize on. It's differentiating yourself from your competitors, understanding what they're up to. It's ensuring that your plan is aligned to the market as well. And it keeps you proactive in understanding what client needs are and industry trends, and sort of keeps you with your finger on the pulse, to use that commonly used phrase. But also it's an exercise in reducing risk. So, you shouldn't be putting pen to paper before you know what's going on in your market. Otherwise, you're sort of setting yourself up to fail, really.
And from a practical point of view, what advice would you offer professionals if they want to conduct a market analysis? Where do you start? How do you do it without feeling overwhelmed?
Yeah, so I think most important point to make is that this shouldn't be war and peace. So it should be at some key bullet points that you can refer back to that are going to remind you of what's going on in your market. And in terms of steps, I would initially start by focusing on identifying 5 to 10 key competitors. So those are people that offer similar services to you or operating in the same industries, for example. And I would be looking at 4 things in particular. So you're looking at services, their clients, their market positioning, so whether they're boutique, whether they're premium, whether they're full service, large, and their marketing, so how they're winning work, which is something that's often overlooked. So you want to be looking at all those things. Now, for lawyers in particular, directories are a great source of information for this. So Legal 500 and Chambers, for example. But also you've got websites. Social media is a really good place for you to dig around and see what people are up to and how they're marketing themselves. And then you want to be looking at the market. So thinking about what's coming in the future. So that might be legislation, it might be trends, it might be differences in how you offer services. You need to be able to see what's coming and plan. And then you want to be able to compare that with your practice and how you see that developing. So you bring all those things together in what we call the SWOT analysis, which you'll see on your documentation, on your BD plan template. And that will bring out the sort of the strengths, which is your own internal strengths, the weaknesses, which are your internal weaknesses compared to what's going on in the market. Opportunities, usually posed by gaps left by competitors, for example, or new legislation, and threats, often posed by competitors, or again, legislation could completely sidetrack you, for example. And what you want to be doing, once you've got that together, it needs to be something that you maintain and update regularly. It's something that you should be looking back at and then adjusting your tactics accordingly. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a second.
Thank you. And if we talk from a practical point of view, could you give us an example for a practice area and walk us through this analysis?
Sure. So I think where I would start is, for example, you're private equity. You're in private equity, you're in a law firm, which tends to be who I work with. You want to be looking straight away at the directories. So picking out, if you're in tier 1, looking at those in tier 1 to see who's ranked there. Having a look at what's being said about them, what type of services they're offering, as I mentioned, what clients are saying in terms of feedback. And I know, Anja, you've got a course about AI and some prompting, so ChatGPT can be really helpful here. but pulling together that information, having a look at it and thinking about how you compare. So if you're a mid-market firm and you're looking at other mid-market firms, what are they doing that you're not? What are the gaps? So if you are really strong in tech, is everybody else really strong in tech? Is there something that you could be doing to improve that? Or is there a gap that you could be sort of slipping into and capitalizing on? And what you want to then be doing is putting it all together into a document, into your SWOT analysis, and then starting to apply it as you move through this process. So we've got, we talk about niching, we'll talk about USPs, we'll talk about goals. You want to be applying that. So again, it's this whole point of not pitching in a vacuum. You want to be looking back at what's going on in the market when you're setting your goals. Does that help?
So perfect. Perfectly described. What I would ask the audience is to think about the competitors that come to mind right away. And I'm sure there are a couple, and write them down in your plan. And then, like Gemma mentioned, we'll have a webinar on how to use AI for business development in legal and consulting firms, but especially for using it to create business development plans and to help with business development plan. But we'll use ChatGPT because we talked about ChatGPT, but there are many tools out there from Claude to many more that you can, the big language models all can help you with, and market analysis. What I usually recommend is, if you already know the competitors, open ChatGPT. If you have the new version, try the new version. You can even put the website of your competitors in there and get the analysis for that. But you can also ask ChatGPT to ask you questions. Tell it that it is an expert in business development for consulting firms or law firms, and tell it that you are conducting a market analysis, and ask it to ask you questions. It will help you flush out all of those thoughts that you probably already have, and it'll be easier to do this analysis on competitors and then do a SWOT analysis. ChatGPT is a really helpful tool for this. And we'll get into this in another webinar, but I can really highly recommend using ChatGPT to brainstorm and help you with market analysis, for example. So what we want to know is, how familiar are you with conducting a market analysis in your industry? Click yes or no, and then we'll see if you've done one before.
Oh, I'm pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I mean, usually you look at your competitors, right? Maybe not an in-depth analysis, but I'm sure you know what your competitors' strengths are and what your strengths are. So for us, we'll move on to step 3. And this is going to raise some eyebrows here. Defining your target audience and niche. How does defining a niche and target audience enhance the effectiveness of a business development plan?
So again, if you've worked with me or if you follow me on LinkedIn, you will know that one of my favorite phrases is, if you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. And what that means is, trying to stand out as a generalist in a sea of generalists is really, really tough. And that is where the niche comes in. So niching means having a specialization or a segment of the market that you're focused on, that stands you out from the generalists. So it's important to recognize that this is more than just a practice area. It's more than just the work that you're doing. It's combining that with an industry and a target audience. So for example, if you're a corporate lawyer and you're just marketing yourself as a corporate lawyer, you'll be up against thousands just in London, for example. Whereas if you're an M&A lawyer who focuses on, for example, I'm thinking about a client who focuses on early years growth companies. Now that is a niche, and actually she is competing in a much smaller pool of individuals and much smaller number of teams. So it helps you to focus on the right clients and helps you to build deeper expertise. So what your clients want, they don't want you to be a generalist, they want you to understand exactly how they're operating in their industry. And it makes your marketing efforts more defined, more aligned, and more impactful. So you're reaching the right people. And I think it's worth pointing out, as you mentioned, that this is a tricky subject. Most people will fight against it. But lawyers with a strong niche are just much more sought after, and they command a higher price.
Yeah, it's the same with consultants. It's not just lawyers. But I understand. I mean, people feel nervous about niching down, but maybe we can, rephrase and again make the point why niching down is so important.
Yeah, I mean, I think that real point to just hit home here is if you are a generalist, you're swimming in a really big pool. So you're a small fish in a very big pond. Versus if you then start to niche, you become a bigger fish in a smaller pond. Now, don't be alarmed that feeling as if you've niched down, that suddenly you're not going to have the same number of prospects. You'll find that even if you've got 15, 20, 30 clients in that particular niche, you're probably only touching 0.01% of the market. So it's not actually going to affect your prospects of bringing you new work.
Yeah, completely agree. And, maybe we can help the audience refine their niche. How would you go about defining their niche in the crowded market today?
So first up, I think that you really need to be looking at what your personal strengths are and what your interests are. So think about the work that you've done recently and what, most importantly, did you enjoy? Because the chances are you could be doing this for quite some time. And if you really want to be building a brand in that area, you need to really love it. So also look back at the SWOT analysis that we've just talked about. So you've looked at the market, you've looked at your competitors. What's going to be popular in the future? What's coming down the tracks if you're doing that sort of horizon scanning piece? What are clients asking for advice on? What are your competitors not already covering? And again, where you could slip in and capitalize on that gap. And, you want to be putting it together, have a really clear idea of who your target audience is within that niche, and then start testing it and refining it. So, the best BD or the easiest BD is the one that's done at home. So looking in at your own firm's clients and starting to have conversations, starting to understand better the clients and starting to figure out what their needs are, and then refining it as you go.
Yeah, I mean, this is a whole nother subject, but we're getting into cross-selling territory here. But also, I would recommend doing a client avatar. So if you already have, your best clients, the ones you really like to work for, your top revenue clients, try to create a client avatar. So look at the clients, what do they have in common? Why do you like to work for them? Which niche are they in? Are they in an industry sector? Just try to get a better view of who your top clients are, and then try to define your niche around those clients. Again, don't put client data into ChatGPT, but ChatGPT can also help you identifying your client avatar if you give it the points that make up your ideal client or the clients you already work for. It will also help you win new clients, because if you know how your ideal client in your niche looks like, it'll be easier to win new clients that look like that. I know we went a little bit into the client development here, but I would like to know from the audience, do you feel like you have a clearly defined niche? And then right. Answers coming in. And then we'll move on to, that is music to our ears. There are lots of people who have a defined niche. I love that. So step 4 in our framework, we've talked about market analysis. We talked a little bit about competitors and client and intermediaries. We'll talk about goals and tactics and objectives and all of that later. But let's start with something different. That is, it also kind of belongs to the niche part, but it is your unique selling point and how to capitalize on that. Let's maybe for the audience define first, why are unique selling points so critical in the professional service industry, and what are unique selling points?
So the unique selling points are much like you say, much like the niche, it's something that differentiates you. So it sets you apart from competitors, but this time on a personal level. So it goes beyond just your services. It's not just about how you do it. It's not just about what you do, it's about how you do it and who you are on a human level. So we're in the age of the personal brand. So we've got lots and lots of lawyers now popping up on LinkedIn who are developing really strong followings and who are sharing, personal stuff and their personality, and they're doing really well off the back of it. In this age, you need to be able to showcase your unique value. So that's why it's so important. People buy from people. So it has to expect you to know the law. That's an absolute given in this day and age. The clients think that you know the law, that's the base starting point. But the USPs highlight why they should choose you over somebody else who does the exact same service as you, for example. And I think it's a really important mechanism for building trust. So it's trust rather than technical expertise that are going to keep clients loyal to you. So the USP is really, really important. So if I think about myself, for example, I'm known to be quite direct. I am from the north of England, but I'm also very loyal to my clients. I work extra hard for them. I go above and beyond. That's something that I have within my USP. And that's one of the reasons why my clients have stuck with me.
Yeah, so what we do at Peak Leap, we try to teach this with Apple, actually. So Apple, the brand. We try to teach people to see their personal brand as a product brand, or actually as a overall firm brand, and then their services as a product. So the example would be, if you think about Apple, you think about, sleek design, and you think about security. So if you buy an iPhone or, a MacBook, you automatically identify the MacBook as safe and the iPhone has a great design, because that is the overall brand and the story of the brand. So this goes into storytelling, and how clients experience you has a lot to do with your personal brand and client service, obviously. But personal brand, you can develop a personal brand and a personal brand story, and that is the USP. The USP might just be the first starting point, but from the USP, you can develop your own personal brand and your brand story, which really helps to sell. I know people don't like that word, but to sell in a crowded marketplace, because people will remember you from your personal brand, and sometimes not just from your service. Also, it helps with top of mind awareness. There are lots of studies saying that clients give work to the people that they come to mind when they think about work, and top of mind awareness has a lot to do with your personal brand and how clients experience any interaction with you. So this is not just a gimmick, or a nice to have. A USP is really important today, especially in a service environment. So we talked a lot about why it's important, but Gemma, what process would you recommend for identifying one's USP?
So start with your strengths. So reflect on what you do exceptionally well. And this might be technical skills, it might be industry knowledge, it might be the fact that you're able to simplify a complex problem and distill it into something that's really easy to digest, for example. Analyze your client feedback. So things like client listening programs or directory testimonials are really helpful to see what clients really value or consistently praise you for, and what they value the most in the way that you do the work. So it could be responsiveness, communication style, attention to detail, any of those things. But also consider your unique experiences. So highlight experiences that make you stand out. So if I think about a client of mine, he is a family lawyer, he is a sitting court judge. But actually, the most important bit of his USP is the fact that he has been personally through an acrimonious divorce. He understands how difficult that was. And actually, when he is having client conversations, he's really holding their hand, and he understands how painful the process is. And actually, in one way, it's become a USP for him that he's the sort of lawyer that really gets it, who really understands and who really cares. And it works. He's got a full book of business. And then also compare yourself to competitors. Obviously, refer back to your SWOT analysis. What are your competitors doing? How can you do things differently? How are you different? How do you go out to market that's different? And really hone in on that. You want to have something that is distilled, that's memorable, something that you can then apply to your marketing, to your when you go out to conferences, when you're introducing yourself. It should be feeding into everything that you're doing, really.
The famous elevator pitch.
Yes, exactly.
But I'm sure, our audience already has an idea about the USP. Try and write down on the framework of the business development plan, USPs, what comes to mind? What is your unique experience? What are you known for within your friends group and your clients? You might already work a while. I'm sure you already have an idea of what your USP is. If you need further help, and again, we're coming back to AI, Claude or ChatGPT, you can actually prompt them to ask you questions to help identify your USP. And this is really helpful, and it will sometimes help you think about an USP that you might have not thought about before. I tried it yesterday when we tested this webinar, and I was actually surprised by some of these questions and answers I gave. So try it out and try to write it down. And then if you need more questions to ask or want to go deeper into the process, Gemma has like a whole lesson on this in her course. But now I want to know, do you believe you know what sets you apart from your competitors? Please answer yes or no. But also feel free to share in the chat, one USP about yourself. What was the first thing that came to mind when we were starting to talk about a USP? If you don't feel comfortable with it, absolutely fine. But we would really be interested to hear what your USP is. Maybe it's an experience. Maybe it's just a, adjective that people would use to describe you.
It's a mixture.
Yeah, I thought so. Usually people have an idea about who they are. And usually when we talk to them about their personal story, like the elevator pitch, or what do you tell people when you meet them at the conference, when we work on this, they have an idea about their USP, but it's not flushed out. And the USP obviously needs a story, but that really helps to create those stories about yourself and a personal brand that you need today.
Yeah.
All
I think
right.
it's also just important to mention that if you're quite junior, it's okay to not be completely clear on what your USPs are. These things will develop as you develop and your practice develops.
Absolutely. What I also think for USPs is, what makes you you? What are your hobbies, for example? What is easy to connect with someone else? If you meet a client at an event, you can tell that you connect easily if you have something in common, like, you like the same kind of sports, or you're both into art, something like that. That is also part of the USP and your personal brand. So if you're junior, you tend to be pulled more towards these kinds of attributes than what clients say about you. All right, let's get into my favorite step and what lots of people are missing. The first part of step 5, goal setting, goals and objectives. Maybe let's start with, can you explain to us, Gemma, what are goals and what are objectives within a business development plan?
So again, just referencing back to the start, you will find that there's lots of different terminology within different firms, and that's okay. Here we're talking about goals and objectives. So here we are talking about goals, and they are broad, long-term targets. So it's where you want to go. This is a sort of ultimate result that you want to achieve, and your objectives and your tactics feed into this. So it becomes a bit of a hierarchy with goals at the top, with objectives supporting. Now, goals tend to be quite qualitative rather than quantitative. So they set the direction for your efforts, but you might not necessarily be able to tick it off a list. You might not necessarily be able to completely say exactly that you've achieved it. So if we think of an example of becoming a leading private equity lawyer for US PE mid-market clients, how do you define leading? We can spend a lot of time digging into that. The point is you're creating objectives that get you towards that feeling that you are a leader within your field. So that's the kind of qualitative piece. And then objectives are the measurable steps that you are going to take to achieve those goals. So they might be, if we think about the private equity example, in order for you to become a leading private equity lawyer, probably one of the things that you might need to do is win new clients in the private equity space within, say, 12 months. And we'll talk about smart objectives, but what objectives and how they differ from goals is that you should know when you've achieved them or not. And that's really important. And that's something that I find most plans are missing, is this sort of woolliness. You end up with a woolliness that was like, oh, did I achieve it? Not quite sure, but it kind of felt good. But
yeah, what's missing to achieve it?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I loved the way that you described it to me. years ago probably, but that it's a hierarchy. It's goals and objectives is what you do to achieve those goals. And we'll have a couple of other steps later on. But why is it important for those objectives to be SMART, and how can professionals ensure theirs are?
So to start off with, I mean, the term SMART has been used for forever, I think, but I'm just going to just remind people of it just to be sure. So SMART is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And you want each of your objectives to be that. Otherwise, you will not be able to say that you've achieved it over the last 12 or 6 or 18 months. So if they are SMART, it means that your objectives they're clear and they're trackable. They will help you to stay focused. So you'll be on the straight and narrow, aiming towards those goals that are higher up in the hierarchy. And they're going to help you to measure your progress. So you will be able to look back in, say, 12 months' time and know whether you've achieved it or not.
Yeah. I mean, for you and I, it's easy to tell someone if their objectives are SMART. But if you are starting out to create your business development plan and you want to test if your your objectives are SMART and if they can reach your goals, here we are again, and you'll get tired of me saying it, but use Claude or ChatGPT. Write down your goal, write down the objectives that you've created for yourself on how to achieve those goals, and then ask ChatGPT, is this a SMART? And ChatGPT or Claude will know what SMART means. Is this a SMART goal? And it will tell you if there's a lag somewhere, if it's I don't know, not timely or something like that. It'll tell you. So that's a really good way today to test all of your objectives. Or you talk to someone like Gemma or I, or maybe a senior partner, talk through those objectives. Are those the right objectives to achieve that goal?
I think it's just important to mention, I just remembered to say one thing. You will find that you might have 1 or 2 goals. They tend to be much bigger, but your objectives, you will probably find that you need to have multiple in order to achieve that one goal. So it's quite rare that you have got just one goal and one objective and then a tactic and then done.
You read my mind, because I was just going to say, look in the framework and you'll see one goal has more than one objective, because to reach your goal, we want to make sure that you have all the tools in the toolkit to reach your goals. So please write down all of the objectives you can think of, even if it's many, many objectives, on how to reach that goal. So I'm sure the audience already thought about some of their goals and maybe even some objectives. How can you reach that? These tend to be the ones you think about a little bit longer, and it helps the more senior you are, because you know what works in your industry. But write down what you thought about in this second and write it in the framework. And then I would like to know from the audience, have you set SMART objectives for your business development? And if you haven't, I'm sure you will from now on. Right? Responses are coming in. Nice.
A mixture, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. All right, we're getting to part 2 of step 5, because we talked about a hierarchy. We have goals, objectives, and now we're going to talk about choosing the right tactics and KPIs. And you will hear me and Gemma talk about this endlessly, about KPIs. A plan that is not measurable is not a plan. I have that a lot with my strategy clients. If I work with them on practice area strategies or firm strategies, most of them have a vision, and then they tell me they have a strategy, but they only have their goals on that vision and what they want to achieve. Maybe they have how they want to achieve that, but there are no KPIs. There is no time frame. There's no accountability, and it's the same with strategy for firm, but for business development plans. You need the right tactics, and you please need KPIs. So, Gemma, how should professionals go about selecting the right tactics to achieve their business development objectives?
Yeah, so I just want to refer back to that hierarchy that I mentioned. So we've got goals at the top, we've got supporting objectives, that's how you're going to get there. And then the tactics are almost the tools, the detailed practical steps that you're probably doing on a day-to-day basis that are going to help you to achieve the objectives and therefore the end goal or goals. So they tend to specify exactly what you need to do in order to achieve the objectives. And it might look like things such as writing articles, doing trips to visit clients, networking, speaking at conferences, the usual things that you think of when you think of BD and marketing. But in terms of how you select the right ones for you, now, firms quite often will stipulate that you need to write X number of articles, for example. And at the more junior end, I'm okay with that. That's fine. And you can sort of start to hone your craft. But as you get more senior in particular, and you've sort of sampled, if you sprayed and prayed previously, you'll probably start to get a bit of a feel for this. But what you want to be choosing are the tactics that play to your strengths, the things that you're good at, the things that you enjoy. Because if you enjoy it, you're more likely to do it again. And choose a few things and do them well. So again, no spraying and praying. So let's reduce from the 10 different things that you could be doing down to 2 or 3 things. And then you really deep dive into those and you really make them work for you. So if you're going to a conference, you'll do the prep work in advance. You might do a bit of marketing around it in terms of LinkedIn. You might have a look at who's going to be attending for your BD, for who you want to speak to. You might go to the event, you might do the follow-up. You know, there's a whole process for each of these tactics, which often people are just scratching the surface. So I think choosing a few things and doing them well is really important with your tactics.
So we have a signature business development course where we go to the business development system that I've been teaching for years. But so the tactics are the chosen business development habits. So we talk a lot about business development habits and how important it is to do business development even for 10 minutes every day. And we'll get into this again at another time. But those tactics, those business development, so you have a couple of business development habits, you know, and for each of those objectives to reach your goals, you will choose different business development habits as your tactics. So you have, again, goals, objectives, tactics, and you have general business development habits that you do, right? You do personal branding on LinkedIn, for example, but it might not be the right tactic you need for that objective to reach that goal. But it is really important to choose the ones, you know, that fit you well, that you have seen working, and also that you can continuously do. So I have a lot of examples on these. And for general business development habits, one of the most successful partners in Europe in private equity will send 3 business development emails every day before he does any other thing, any client work, anything. He does bring his 2 daughters to kindergarten beforehand, but he does send 3 emails a day. But that is his business development tactics, right? But he also had the goal, or cannot get into too many specifics, but he also had goals within his practice that he wanted to reach, and his objectives and tactics were different ones. So the tactics weren't the same as his daily business development habits. They were very specific to reach those objectives, and with those objectives, reach those goals. So think about what you're good at, but for the tactics, choose what will have the most impact. And how do we measure what has the most impact? There's something called KPIs, and you've heard it a million times, but maybe Gemma, you can go again into or explain to the audience what role do key performance indicators play in tracking the success of business development plans?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, this is one of my favorite topics because it's very, very rare to see people using KPIs, and it can be the difference, as you mentioned right at the beginning, between a good plan and a great one. So KPIs are the quantifiable measures that you're using to evaluate the success of your tactics. So they are allowing you to adjust and optimize. They're giving you the real-time feedback on the return on investment, which is something that's often missing. So when you're thinking about your KPIs, when you're writing your plans, which hopefully you're doing now, you might have a tactic which is to attend a conference. And now that is not the KPI, that's the tactic. And often what you find is with the completer finisher mentality, it's a check, I've attended the conference. But actually the KPI will keep you honest in terms of the success of that conference. So the KPIs might be around how many people did you meet? How many people did you follow up with? Did any work come of it, 6 months down the line? So it's making you evaluate the tactic that you've employed. So that's why they play such a key role, because that's the bit that is often missing.
Yeah, and again, if you need ideas on what KPIs to use for each of your objectives, either you watch Gemma's course or you ask, or do both, ask ChatGPT, because it'll also be able to answer you if these are the right KPIs, or what other KPIs you could use for that objective and that tactic. Moving on, question to the audience, and this time it's not a yes or no question. It is, what have you found the most effective tactic in reaching your business development or your business objectives? And I know this is a long question, and if you have an answer for us, we would be really interested, and you can put it in the chat. But really, it was more important for us that you write something down in your business development plan framework, because we want you to go away from this webinar with a plan. Moving on, because we're already short on time. I wanted to ask Gemma, could you describe the different facets of business development and how they differ from marketing? Because I get a lot of questions about, I was the associate director for business development, marketing, and PR for Kirkland & Ellis, and I got the question all the time: what is marketing and what is business development?
Yeah. So BD, think about it as one to few. So there's the personal interactions, it's about building relationships, which usually will lead to work, versus marketing, which is one to many. So that is broader, it's focusing on brand visibility and profile raising. So both are essential and complementary, and needed for long-term success. But what you find is professional services tends to focus on marketing, so it's a bit less scary. But what you also find with that is they tend to generate profile rather than business. So you might have a really good LinkedIn following. People might associate you with a certain practice area or an industry, but it's not converting to work. So when you're building your plans, you need to have a balance between the two.
Yeah, remembering that marketing is for the many and business development is for the few is really key. And, if we are talking about building your book of business, your personal brand, you can increase probably a lot with marketing, but business development is what actually, will set you apart and will create a network that constantly will create work for you. So
it's how you build the pipeline.
Exactly. That's how you build the pipeline. So our question to the audience will be, do you focus more on business development, marketing, or a mix of both in your current strategy? And then we are getting to step number 8, and we are at the last 2 steps, and this one is really important, the art of evaluation. So we've talked about a business development, and hopefully you have a clear idea of how you put together a business development plan now. But why is regular evaluation important for the success of a business development plan, Gemma?
So hopefully if you've been listening, it feels fairly obvious, but actually so many people are just not evaluating. They create the plan and then they might start to execute it, and then they don't look back to see what's actually happened. So regular evaluation is critical because it measures the effectiveness of what you're doing, particularly your tactics, whether your objectives are getting you towards your goals. It helps you to track progress. So it means that you've got an idea of whether you're going to achieve what you want to achieve in that particular year or not. You don't get to the end of the year and think, gosh, I didn't achieve it, and that comes as a surprise to me. If you're doing a regular evaluation, you should know and you can pivot. And I think that pivot piece is really important. So if you're evaluating, you will know what's working and what's not, and then you can start to change, you can start to refine, and just make, course correct almost. And it also just means that you get to do more with less, because you know what works and what is having the impact, what is bringing you business, what's building your profile successfully.
Yeah, and for evaluating, for me, it's also important, tracking the return of investment of business development activities. What methods would you recommend?
So, personally, I am quite old school with this, but I do really just like a spreadsheet that I have I call a tracker, which links to my plan. And I have, the activities, the tactics, what KPIs, any quantitative data, any qualitative data. So how did it feel? Did I really enjoy speaking at that conference or this webinar, for example? And then I just keep it up to date. Usually every Friday morning. I know that we love BD habits. I go back and I update it. You've also got things like systems that your firms might have in place already. So CRMs, for example, client relationship management systems, sometimes they're set up for you to track this kind of thing. But the key bit for the tracking is making sure that you're not just tracking the input to the activity, but also the outcome or the output. What did you get out of the thing that you did?
Yeah. So I am not old school, but we have the enterprise version of ChatGPT. So ChatGPT cannot train on our data. So I have my own window just for tracking our business development tactics and objectives and goals. And I've trained ChatGPT on asking me questions about the KPIs regularly. So I don't have a set date, but at least every month I will look into this and fill in my data and then ask it to ask me questions about what I think the return of investment was. And it keeps you honest. It really helps and keeps you honest. All right. Well, we want to ask the audience for our last audience question is, how often do you evaluate the effectiveness of your business development activities? Monthly, quarterly, rarely? And I'll click monthly because that's what I just said. And we actually do that monthly. And then we'll get to my favorite step and the favorite part of this webinar, common mistakes to avoid and top tips by the expert Gemma Francis. So Gemma, what are some common mistakes professionals make when creating or executing their business development plans?
So number one, without a doubt, is perfectionism and procrastination. So this is really rife within professional services. This feeling as if the document, the plan has to be absolutely perfect, that you sort of go down a bit of a rabbit hole with analysis paralysis because you want to have all the data before you can execute. This is the number one thing that I see holding people up from actually just executing and just going out and doing great BD. So that is my number one mistake. I think number two is the failure to set measurable objectives. So again, we talked about it already. If you can't look back and know whether you've achieved something or not, there is something wrong here with the objective. You need to be able to look at it and assess your progress. And then I think the third one is not tracking. We talked about this with the evaluation. If you don't know whether it's working for you, you could be potentially wasting your efforts, your time. So actually what I want is for you to be able to learn and adjust and refine so that down the line you're able to, that LinkedIn generates clients for you or that going to conferences really works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. You need to track. It'll make it more effective. And, we want to be as effective as possible with our business development because we don't have a lot of time. Exactly. All right, so we went to common mistakes to avoid, and now I want to hear your top tips for ensuring the success of a business development plan.
So number one has definitely got to be focusing on consistency. So a bit like we talked about the feast and famine cycles with clients, the same thing can absolutely happen with your BD. So you have these periods where you have really intense BD and then you're blitzing all the emails and you're getting yourself on LinkedIn, etc. And that's fabulous to see. But actually, it contributes to burnout. And if you have small, regular, consistent habits or efforts, that tends to lead to long-term success. You don't have this roller coaster of activity. So consistency is number one for me. Number two would be sharing your BD plan. So the stats say if you share your plan with somebody else, somebody that you respect and you want their opinion, then the likelihood is that you're going to execute on that plan and the likelihood is that you're going to be more successful in your execution of it. So, I think don't keep it to yourself and, think about something private to just you. Actually, if you've got a superior or a peer that you want to share it with, then I absolutely would recommend it. And then final thing that I would say is be flexible, adapt as you grow. If you're tracking and you're understanding what works and what doesn't work, if the market's changing, if something completely explodes within your industry, you need to be able to adapt to it and start thinking about what comes next. And that is where the plan is perfect for that.
Yeah, agree. So I have a bonus tip. Because what I've seen is a lot of people set themselves too many goals. And I think you should be really selective with your goals, not more than 3 to 5, because you only have a certain amount of time. Even if you establish a business development habit, which I highly recommend, you need time to put towards the tactics to achieve your objectives and goals. So I would say not more than 3 to 5 goals. You might think now, oh, I only have one goal in mind. I want market leadership. World domination, I don't know, but you'll see the more you refine your plan, the goals get, more distinctive, and focus on, maybe 3 for the beginning if you're more junior, maybe, 5 if you're more senior. But be very selective about your goals and where you put your energy. I think that will be my top tip. And with that, we got a couple of questions. For example, I'm a junior consultant. Should I write my own business development plan, even though I don't have my own clients yet? We will get to all of these questions in an email because we don't have enough time. But before we finish, I would love to hear from Gemma, because we've had this discussion before. It was really important for us that this webinar is practical and yet that you walk away with a framework of a business development plan. But Gemma, before we wrap up, what will be your key takeaways that you want our audience to take away from this webinar?
Okay, so progress over perfection. Please just go ahead and do it. Even if it feels like your plan isn't perfect, don't let that hold you back. Just get started. You will not regret it, and just refine as you go. Number 2, please don't put it in a drawer and then forget about it.
That would have been my tip. Do not put it in a drawer or on your shelf. Have it next to you. Work on it all the time.
It needs to be a living document, a living document that you're working against, that you're using, regularly. And I think third one is really challenge yourself. So don't have that completer finisher mentality and pick things that really feel like they're in your comfort zone. Challenge yourself and just see what the art of the possible is.
Yeah, agree. All right. Thank you, Gemma. And I told you guys before, Gemma's brilliant when it comes to building business development plans. But I would love to go give the microphone over to Daniel, because he will wrap up our webinar. And thank you from my side for listening.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Gemma and Anja. I'm sure everyone got a lot and learned a lot from your expertise. It was such a great session. As I mentioned earlier, everyone, today marks the launch of Gemma's comprehensive course on creating a business development plan. So what you should do now you should have a framework to develop your BD plan, correct? Your next step should be to watch Gemma's course on our e-learning platform and refine your plan accordingly. Once you have that done, you should book a 1-hour session, one-on-one, either with Gemma or Anja, to go over your plan, answer some of the questions you might still have, and make sure the plan is complete and fits your needs and goals. You can go to our PicLeap website, picleap.com, and under About Session section, you can book the session there with either of them. Then another thing you can do, you can download the PicLeap app for iOS users. Unfortunately, Android is not yet available. We're working on that. Will be coming up soon. And you have access to all of our e-learning platform at the tip of your fingers. As I promised, I have a special offer for all of you here. If you want to explore more and get hands-on guidance, we're offering an exclusive 15% off, 15% discount on the courses for participants of this webinar. We have just posted the link for Gemma's course and the discount code in the chat. So go ahead and copy it before we end this meeting, so you have it. But I'll also send this via email to you along with Gemma's takeaways from this webinar. Okay, this course can also be used to purchase any of the other courses available on our platform, just to remind you. But here's the important part, or one of the important part. This code is and this offer is only valid for 48 hours. So don't sleep on it too long. Make sure you take advantage of it, and I know you're gonna enjoy. Now, if you have any questions or any further information that you need, please don't hesitate to contact us either via email or on LinkedIn, and we'll be able to get back. We'll make sure to get back to you. If there are any questions that you still have and we couldn't get to the end of it, we couldn't answer today, please send us a message. We'll definitely get back to you. I'll make sure that Anja and Gemma will respond to your questions. With that being said,
We did it in under an hour.
There you go. As promised, very punctual. But I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I know all of you have a busy day and you took the time to join, and I'm sure this will be valuable to you. And we're looking forward to continue to support you on your business development journey. There you go, hearts. And I hope all of you have a great rest of the day. I'll see you next time.
Thank you guys.
So much.
Bye.